In reviewing the governor's budget book, each agency has performance measures that they should meet or want to meet, and certainly with my background, I know Representative Dunbar's worked on this. I mean, we want to see positive performance measures. And under the DEP's General Government Operations, one of the performance measures is to eliminate the historical permit application backlog, something that we make decisions on here about funding. Absolutely. And in the governor's 2019-20 budget book, the DEP estimated that the fiscal year that there were 545 applications still pending, 545. That was last year when we were here. But now when we look at the budget book, we find the actual number that's in the book says 8,715. And then in addition to that, there's a letter that you had written to Matt Niddle concerning this, and in that letter it talked about that the backlog was 8,715. So there's some, first of all, I want to know, was there something tremendously wrong in the estimation last year in the budget book that we have to, you know, we want good numbers ourselves when we make these decisions. The other thing I will say too is that when we made the funding decision to do your GOO, you know, the general operating expenses, we pretty much funded it at the number that you expected us or wanted us to. Right. So maybe you can let us know what is there something wrong with the estimation? What's going on there? So
I don't have the performance measures from the budget book in front of me, but I do know our 2016-17 number was that 8,715, and that was the starting point for us to do a real focus on our backlog management. Now I know it is down to about 500, and to be blunt, some of that reduction represents better data quality, where there were permits issued that weren't being reflected within our system. Some of those are permits that have been issued in the interim, and the 500 that remain, there's either some things we're waiting on from applicants or some litigation issues related to.
Being a CPA, you know, I'm very detail-oriented, and particularly when you look at this, when you look at things like this. And I guess one thing that I did want to bring up in last year's appropriations hearings, when we looked at this data, you know, I think there's an expectation, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were hoping that we get caught up, that it would be zero. And then when we look at this year's you know, the budget book, the executive budget again, the anticipation is that we will get caught up and be zero again next year. I mean, are we being realistic when we look at that approach, or what should our thought process be? Because as you just said, it seems like at some point you're waiting for more information. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think, you know, some of what we've been working through to put in place related to our permitting is clear expectations that if we just aren't getting there, and I always point out it's not permits issued, it's permits disposed. So if we're simply not getting the information, one of the things we're having conversations with, and the applications remain woefully delinquent, like it's okay to deny that application and return it if we're not getting the information we need. So the goal is to get us down to zero, absolutely, in terms of that backlog. And what we're seeing on a year-over-year basis over the last 3 years is issuing more permits, disposing of more permits each year than we've received, which is what's eating away at that balance.
I think one thing, I mean, anytime we look at data, like I said, with being a numbers guy, we want to make the right decisions. And last year, the backlog, it said 545. Now it said, like it says, maybe you said maybe it's something with the years, but it says there was a backlog of 8715 the prior year. I'm just letting you know that.
Sure.
And it was a letter to Director Niddle, and we need to know that. That worries me, because we want to be able to make the right decisions. You know,
we'll offer clarification back and just make sure that those.
Well, we're definitely going to need that. The other thing is too, you know, through the whole permitting process, you know, there tends to be a backlog. You know, certainly in my area of South Central Pennsylvania, two things. Can you give us the breakdown of the backlog by permit category? Would that be possible to provide this committee and the chairman the backlog for which permits are there? And then secondly, of course, I like to know the regions of the state. I think that's very critical, because All I'm going to say is we continue to hear frustration of people trying to get permits, you know, and living in eastern Lancaster County, we have people going to Maryland. We've lost some businesses, you know, going there because they get frustrated with the permit process at times. So anyway, I see my time is up. I do think it's an area that we need to continue to address because, you know, we're trying to make the right decisions with funding here, and this is a big area. So thank you for your time.
Sure, and the one thing I would point out is under our permit decision guarantee, again, from 17-18 to 18-19, 17-18, we were at 93%, 18-19, 95%, but notably within that, we had some specific areas like oil and gas was down to 31%, now up over 90%. Similar movement in water quality, air quality permitting, where we've seen improvement, and specifically within Southwest Regional Office area, they've eliminated 86% of the permit backlog within that region.
If you could provide us that data by region,
Absolutely.
that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.